Hey there, welcome. It's movie night. This evening, we're going to go ahead and review the movie The Class. Not to, get confused with the last film we reviewed called The Class, the 2008 French film. This one is the 2020 film, The Class, starring Anthony Michael Hall as Mr. Falk and Debbie Gibson as Miranda Long. Um, Ruben, I started watching this film and well, first, I guess I should share with the audience that this film is very much like, well, I should say much like, but it gets a feel of The Breakfast Club. These are six students who are having to spend a Saturday afternoon making up a class. It actually is a drama class taught by the Debbie Gibson character, Miranda Long, and they have an administrator in the room, like proctoring the class, and he sits in the back and makes his comments throughout the film. And so there is some feel of The Breakfast Club because there's kids staying after on a Saturday, making up a class, and you see the dynamics of the students as they get through the day. They have to finish, they have to accomplish an activity, right? They're going to do a scene with a partner and so forth. But they're all trying to basically, the whole climax of the film is getting to a point where they're all revealing their lives, right, in front of each other. And so it was so painful, Ruben. I almost stopped this film like after 15 minutes. I go, it's not even as good. This movie is not even for a TV movie. This was so awful. And every so often my wife would come in the room, or my son, and they would go, what is this? I go, I don't know, but I have to finish it. I have to get through it. It's just so, the acting was the worst, but then I thought, it's the writing. The writing of this of this feature was just awful. If they would have just did a remake of The Breakfast Club, that would have even been better, right? The kids, I didn't care, about. They all had their issues. One was going through cancer. These are tough issues. One was lost parents, and another student was dealing with drinking, and another one about abortion. All these big issues that students do deal with today, which it would have been really interesting to deal with, but not with this crew, not with this writing crew. And I was just, I can't believe I was guessing myself. I said, I bet you Ruben did not finish this film. So Ruben, can you please answer that question? Did you finish this film, and did you like this film?
It was a very terrible film, but it's interesting. As bad as it was, you're right. The first 15 minutes might have been worse than the last 20 minutes. The first 15 minutes were really rough. It was almost incompetent. Like, the way I would describe this film would be this. I would say, get a student director, like a student who is getting his degree in film, but is not, maybe he's a C student, and give him $1 million to remake The Breakfast Club, and you would get this movie. And I guess we should start with Anthony Michael Hall, who executive produced it. He played this principal or vice principal, and I thought, does he think he's playing? Is it Paul Winfield? What was his name? Paul Gleason. Paul Gleason from The Breakfast Club. Does he think he's playing this guy? Because he's not. He's not funny. Mm-hmm. He's got nothing to say. He's just a scold and annoying. So that's the first problem. And he put this thing together at some level. He
was executive producer.
So then you have these students in the class. Well, one of them so they have to deliver a scene, I suppose, or a monologue. And one of them, I guess they were supposed to describe the scene before they were going to present it, which was painful to hear their descriptions, just boring. Mm-hmm. But one of the girls gets up there and says, my character can see inside of people, sort of read minds. Mm-hmm. And then one of the students sitting, watching, just says, that's stupid. Okay, these are high school students. She says, mm-hmm. That's stupid. And I thought, I've had some really rough kids mm-hmm. in my day, and I'm not even sure they would do that. They would have the disrespect of each other to do something like that. Yeah. And then the teacher is incompetent. She just sits there and does nothing about it. And but I really feel like this writer doesn't understand teenagers, and doesn't understand that teenagers wouldn't do that. Be that rude. Then you have this football jock who he tells his story. So he's telling his character again. He before he does their scene, which they, by the way, they end up not doing a scene, which was a cop out. Instead, they totally ripped off the Breakfast Club by having them write a paper of what their weekend was like, and then further ripping off the Breakfast Club by having one person represent them all. How shameless was that? Anthony Michael Hall, what is he doing? But then you have this football jock getting up, describing the scene instead of delivering the scene, which is boring. That he's going to write. Makes no sense. This is the scene I'm going to write. It's about a football jock, me. I'm this football star running to the sideline, running to the end zone with the ball in my hand. And just before I'm going in, I realize I don't really want to go in. Instead, I want to wear a tutu and dance like a ballet dancer. So I'm thinking, wow, gee, I wonder what his secret is. It's like, when I was watching, I was thinking, take the most anti-gay writer you can think of. I mean, not that we know of any anti-gay writers, but imagine an anti-gay writer who just hates gay people, right? Even he wouldn't write something like that. Even he would think, no, that's too anti-gay. That's too over the top. Just cliche. And like, come on, a football jack suddenly stopping and wearing a ballerina and get up, and that's, come on. But he says that. And then later on, no surprise to anybody, he comes out of the closet. And the reaction of the students, let me ask you a question, and maybe I have a different experience than you. Sure. Excuse me. Is there still a stigma at your school if a student comes out of the closet?
I don't think so. I think we're kind of going the other direction now. It's kind of
going.
Yeah. It's there.
What do you mean went? At least in my school.
Oh yeah, it's not. It's kind of a pride thing now. It's kind of a and nobody cares.
It would induce a yawn or anything. It would be like, "Hey, go boy!" Everybody would applaud.
Good job, right?
It's a different world now, and you would think that these guys are in the 50s or something. These students don't look like they're Mormons or conservative in any way or Christian or anything.
Right.
And they're like looking at him like he's an alien. That was a weird scene.
Yeah.
So you have all this, and I guess you're
stressing me out again. I just really hated this, and you're just reminding me of things what I hated. But you're doing a good job of it.
The last thing I would say is that there was a point in the film. So yes, a lot of these students have trauma, and they're exhibiting it through their not scene. And by the way, it would have been very interesting if they decided to actually show a film, an acting class in school, where they would exhibit some of these ideas in creating scenes. We haven't really seen too much of that. There's a TV show, I know you've watched it, called Barry, that really gets into the acting world, which is interesting because it hits on some of the dynamics of acting class. But here you just have people yakking. And these kids have trauma. Okay, what do you do with students with trauma? At one point, the admin, another cliche, overly concerned admin, chastising the teacher. We haven't seen that very much. Pulls out the teacher and says, "What are you doing? Do you know these students have issues, and why are you bringing it out of them?" Which I'm thinking is a pretty interesting point. I mean, he has a point there. They're only getting more angry, it seems.
And she's not equipped.
And that's what he's saying. She's not equipped to handle this. Mm-hmm. And her response is, "I'm trying to create a safe space for these students." And then his response was, "Just teach them." And I thought, she's a teacher. There's a classroom. She's paid to teach. Maybe she should just teach them. And by the way, if you teach them, you might address some of those problems. Because I know that when I'm in my element with my students, I'm teaching the content which is meaningful to me. It might exhibit in such a way where it'll become meaningful to them. And I do it in my own unique way, where maybe they'll start to forget some of their problems. And if they don't, then I could direct them to a capable adult. Maybe I'm not the right person to handle some issues. And this is something that actually happened this week.
Right.
And I continue teaching, and everybody else continues learning. What a thought, huh, Jacob?
You know, that is the greatest thing. I mean, that has come out, hopefully, out of this video is that, hey, maybe we as teachers really focus on our teaching. And yes, there are students who are really dealing with, especially after COVID, right? So all these social emotional things. Yes, there are times in class things come up, but to go ahead and stop everything and just totally deal with some, a lot of times, I know for me, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a psychologist. I don't know all the ins and outs. And I think I'd feel more comfortable having someone who's able to help that student and direct them in that direction. And not to say to ignore the child. No, definitely get on top of that and make sure that child is taken care of and feels safe. But I'm not sure if that's the whole goal. I think the goal is to teach a child, of course, in a place where they're safe, but not to just say, hey, that's all we're going to do is we're going to deal with the social emotional stuff. Yes, that's important, but not the whole thing. So yeah. This was a tough movie to watch. There I mean, we can go on and on. There is a scene at the end, Ruben. I'm not sure if you caught it. I'm sure you caught it, where father of one of the young men, or actually an uncle, comes in and picks him up after he, was caught drinking, or they thought he had, alcohol on him, and he was fighting. And so this young man was leaving, and his uncle basically going to take him home. And the uncle is the janitor from the Breakfast Club.
I know I didn't make that connection.
Yeah, I saw him. I go, man, that guy looks familiar. And there's, they're basically saying, hey, Breakfast Club. But this is not the Breakfast Club people. Do not.
I do want to, last thing real quickly, they mention, the teacher mentions Neil Simon and gives a little background on him. Yeah. But it would have been good to look at a scene that she would share something. So part of how we heal, part of it, I'm not saying I'm not saying it's 100%. Part of how we heal is by reading texts, is by reading things that we are not accustomed to. Students, certainly young kids, are not accustomed to reading. And part of it is laughing. Neil Simon, they could have read The Goodbye Girl or seen a scene from it, or The Odd Couple, or he's written so many great things, but she just gives a little background and lets them off their merry way. And it's like, this is not a very strong theater teacher.
No.
But anyway.
And we never saw them act. So
I don't know if we should waste any more time on this movie, but
no, I think I think sometimes all the real awful ones we spend a lot of time, and the really good ones, and the ones
well, you don't. Well, I thought you were.
You thought I was gonna love this film, huh?
Anyway,
be honest.
Anyway, let's just end it.
All right. Hey, thank you for being with us this evening, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.